Welcome everybody. We're going to be going over how to use loop fors in the interface and in execute. I'm going to start off with the interface loop. Very easy tutorial. I'll be using Blender 4.0 and I'll be using Serpens 3.3.3. So let's grab ourselves a panel node and tag it in. You'll have a new category here. Switch this to loops, whatever you want. And what I'm going to do is I have a couple of different items here. Got a couple curves, got a mesh, got a light, and we want to loop through these objects but only show the curve and then add some functionality to it. Now, one of those first things you want to do is understand what's going on behind the scenes. In order to do that, let's grab any object and let's right click here. You can right click object to add whatever, it doesn't matter. Click copy context. Let's go to the blend data browser, go to the context. This is going to take you into the 3D view context. This is where we need to be. You're going to come down to view layer, drop that down. Let's grab the object collection. This is going to be the most stable collection. Shift V will drop this in for you. I'm going to grab a couple more nodes while we're in here. Let's drop down objects, and since we've got it, let's grab a couple pointers. We're going to need them. Let's grab an active object and Shift V. Make sure to save these. Let's grab any other pointer, does not matter. You can grab the curve, whatever. And let's Shift V that in as well. And that's kind of good for now. So I want to tag in the loop for interface, and what it's going to do is it's going to loop everything in my scene. In order to visualize that, I need a display property, and you'll see I have four things here. I've got two curves, a mesh, and a light. That's all my four objects on my new panel. And we can change the label to loop for, whatever you want to do. Now, this is taking in a collection of the actual view layer object, so everything is going to be in there. So what you're going to need, and we'll just stash this away for later, what you're going to need are some checks in here, some checks and balances to make sure that you're only going to be pulling in what you want. If you want to isolate your add-on to a certain object, that is going to be very easy to do, and then we'll do that in just a minute. Once you pump this collection in, you can output all these different types of data. For now, we're going to be sticking to properties because I want to display properties, and it's going to be one of the biggest things you do. So let's grab an if interface and we'll tag that in. Grab a Boolean math, tag that in, and we want to grab a special node called isObjectType. This thing is going to save your life because you can automatically select whatever you want. I'm going to go with curve for one of these. I'm going to grab an object node and say, hey, if there's an active object and it's a curve, and that is true, then loop. And it's still just looping. So it's not doing anything wrong. It's just not, there's not enough information for the add-on and create a lot of save points. There's not enough information for the add-on to tell it to do anything but to loop for the moment. So if we pull up right here, we can see we are compiling successfully. Looks good. Now, one thing, I did turn off the app coat links add-on. I was getting a ton of errors with Serpens. And so if I exit this and type in for the 3D coat app link, yeah, I turn it off. I'm just running all kinds of errors with that. And I figured out that was the one that was causing me to not even get the tutorial done because it was just going crazy. So one thing we can do for sure, and I don't think I grabbed it, I didn't grab the name. We can go back into the context under the view layer and go to objects, anything, grab a point light, doesn't matter. Click the filter, let's click name, and let's grab name. And let's also grab type. And that way we can check types as we do our checks here. We'll throw that down here and stash that in case we actually need it later. So now what I want to do is I want to display the name, and it's displaying point light for everything because that's what I have. If I select active object, it's going to say curve. And then if I select off, it's not going to show anything. And interesting, to see. Still compiling successfully, which is nice. But I want to take the loop for interface that is the name for the objects, and if we select our curve and we now say, hey, the name is going to be in the curve, the curve is going to be in the loop, then what we're doing now is we now have the specific name for everything in the loop. And all that is fine and good, but this is going to be where we grab the type and do another check, because I don't really want that setup. I'm just going to shift right click. I want to make this a little bit of a cleaner setup here, so I have a little bit of room to work with. And I want to grab another if else. I can just shift D, drop that in. Now this is where a compare node comes in. Grab a compare and tag that in. That didn't work too good. Let's try this again. I notice that happens sometimes with the Serpens node wrangler, but it still works good. If you don't have, if you don't have it, then you need to get on the Serpens Discord and go search that out. I believe you can also go to the Blend Data browser, and I think you can go in to the add-on itself. This is what it is right here. Corza put that together. And then you can probably go into, I think, Marketplace and go in and check that out. So go in and look around. Here's one version under add-ons, Serpens Node Wrangler. I think there's a newer version of that though. So just kind of be careful if you're using the 4.0 version. You don't want to get a bunch of errors. So what I want to do now is I want to compare the type. Okay, so I'm going to grab the type, and so we can visualize, I'll throw in a trigger, Shift P with Node Wrangler will tag all this in for me, and I want to see what I'm getting out of this. This is a point light, I don't want that. I'll grab this to property and then hit it. This says curve. So what is selected is a curve. If I go to mesh, it's going to select and say mesh. Go to light, it's going to say light. So what I want to do is I want to plug this in. I'll plug in the string value. I'm going to grab a string node, tag that in, all caps. I'm just going to type in curve. And now I'm going to say, hey, if object type in the loop is a curve, only display that if it's true, the name. Okay, so now I've got the name for both of these, and that's going to work out pretty good. And that's one way you can isolate it. And if I don't want that to be a curve, and I think I've got this set. So if I go to mesh here, and then here, all caps, type in mesh, then I'll get the Suzanne when it's selected, but I don't want that. I want the curve. So I'm going to type in curve again, and so when that is an active object and a curve, so I don't produce any errors, like let me grab the console here, we're looking really good, so no errors, and we can continue on. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to add some more functionality to this, and I think we could snag some different things. So let's go back in under the context view. I'll go to view layer, and I suppose we could actually go to data for this and then go to objects and pull up something like the Bezier curve. Let's type in wire. I don't think it's going to do it. Yeah, there it is, show wire. I didn't have to go into data. Sometimes you have to go down here into data for curve, certain things, and put those values in. And the reason I'm not coming over here to like objects and then going down and saying, hey, visibility, or grabbing wireframe from here, it's just a different property sometimes. So I want to throw a row node in right here, and I'll tag this in, and I want to set this to property, so it's using the active, so you can see that's using active object. All good. Make sure you got a save point. I don't like what that is, so I don't like the icon, that's being displayed. It's just a Boolean checkbox. I don't like that. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to type wire, and I want to grab something that looks like a wireframe, doesn't matter, and we can do it like that. And so now we've got access to these to be able to turn the wireframe on and off for these. And if you notice this, both icons, the emboss is going off for both of these, but that's because I don't have anything plugged in to the data. So this isn't in the loop. So it's just going to turn off for everything. And this very quickly is going to get messy. So I'm just going to do a small amount of housekeeping here. And what I want to do, let's throw in something special here. And not that. I did it 2 times in a row. Let's see if I can cut it this time. I want to teach you guys portals if you haven't used them. A portal is a way to pipe a value without using noodles. So this is just going to take whatever property value, and you don't have to set this part, but you do when you shift D this, because it's going to have a nomenclature right here. You want to take that number, and now we are going to, come back. Now we're going to turn this into an output. Plug this in like that, you're going to have a problem. So make sure you switch it to whatever data type it is that you're piping. Then you can go ahead and do the thing. Bring that over. And this can feed multiple, doesn't matter. And then I don't want noodles everywhere. So I'm just going to bring this over here and tag one in here. And I'll give this one its own as well. So now you saw, as soon as I did that, you could tell one is on and one is off. If I remove that, they're both going to show. So create a save point, so we have something good going here. Looks good, and it all works. Make sure to align so it doesn't look bad and kind of tacky. Nobody wants that. So we got that, we got the name, and one more thing I want to do before this row is set is I want to add a button in here, and this button can be blanked out, and we'll choose an icon, something like a select. You can use the teardropper, or you can grab the select arrow, doesn't matter what. And I want to add a property to this button. And the way I'm going to do that is through an operator. And I don't want my add-on to go linear, if you will, like for a million miles. So what I can actually do is bring this down as like my next line of code. And under this, I'm going to have an operator. These can kind of sit together. I'm going to F2 this, and I'll just say this is my names button. And I know I've got my caps doing all kind of special things. So that's my names button. I can go over to node. I can give that a color. So I say, hey, all of my operators are going to have a blue on them. And then I can bring the size up. And if that for some reason doesn't look good to you, you can grab a reroute, and you can throw a reroute in here and shift D it. Do something like that just to make it look a little bit nicer. And I think that looks pretty good. Now I need to do a few things here because I want this button and this operator to be tied together. So I'll just call this names. And if you make a bunch of add-ons, you're going to want to start naming things as you go. So this would be names loop. Okay, don't just name, don't have a bunch of add-ons that you make with operators that are all named names. That's going to get crazy real quick, but this is called loops, so this one can be loops. Now I'm going to want a set property eventually in this area, but what I want to do with this is I want to create a button that can grab the object. It'll grab the active object for me, and I don't have to do anything. And one of those ways you can do that is by going in here and grabbing those properties that we just grabbed, which are right here. And so we're going to need these, the active object and everything else. But first, when you're in the viewport, you can't just grab an active object because you don't know if your user has everything selected. And if you just select one thing, it's not going to work. It's going to throw an error. So what you're going to want to do is be able to left click here, right click, get Serpens property, Shift V, get a run operator. You want to deselect first. And so we'll run a deselect operation. And then we're going to run a select set. And that can be found here as well. I'm just going to recopy context, just in case something changed in the viewport. And I'll go back to the view layer, objects, any object, doesn't really matter. I'll go for my curve again. I'm going to type in select, grab my select set, and I can Shift V and drop this in. Now, a couple things are going to happen. I want to deselect everything, select a certain item, and then set that item as an active object with a pointer. And so the pointer can plug in here, grab that, turn it into a property, but this isn't going to work the way it is. And we can go ahead and tie in the button here, go for loops, and you'll see it's not doing anything, it's just deselecting. So if I have everything in here, the only operation it has that it understands is the deselect. So inside the operator, I want to click the plus symbol, and I want to throw something different in there, like name it. Now there's a property inside of the operator, and what I can do is I can throw that property out here and tag this in as a string value. Now the button instantly is going to have this attached to it. Now what do I want? I'm going to want the portal property based on a name. So I want to grab my name objects. I want to throw this over here, because I'm trying to grab this object by name and by what's in the loop. So if I come back over here now, let's check everything. I need my state to be true. Thing looks pretty good. I've got this, make sure to save. And now if I grab these objects, you'll see I am individually grabbing whatever object is in here. Now if I Shift D this, I can now grab any one of these objects. It will always point to that object, which is our pointer based on a name value. The name value is on the button. The button is in the loop. It's tied to a name, and it's tied to the loop properties for the portal for the view layer for view objects. And our portal here is keeping everything super clean. We don't have a million noodles. I've got one noodle going across that's kind of in the way, and I can even bring that down, maybe do a couple things to make it look a little less garbagey. It didn't actually look too bad before. I don't like doing the other noodles. I've had the data not go right sometimes. It's very weird. Sometimes that happens, but it's rare now in the newer versions. All right, so now we've got a selection set, and what we can do is we can throw in some other things here that you might want attached. You can do a show in viewport or not, all kind of cool things. So we can go back into our curve here, and we can just say, hey, let's hide in viewport. We can throw that in there, and we can also refresh and do render. And this is a very light version of being able to throw these properties in, if you will. And you don't have to display these per se right inside of this. You can actually grab like a display property. You can go to the interface from the loop, okay, and you can drag that out and just continue on your code. And you could leave that outside if you wanted to, but it's not really advised. You can do that, it does work. And so if you got something else selected here, it's going to work, but it's not as good as populating it in the loop. So we're going to actually throw this in with the loop, but I'm going to throw it in after this button. And so we'll have it right here. And this can go in with a portal as well. So if I tag all of these in, you'll see these will individually work now. So you can throw whatever you want in there. And in order for this all to look like really nice, we can also say, hey, anything that's in the loop, let's throw it in a box. It can get its own box per se if you wish. Doesn't look too good there. We can throw it here. So if there is an active object, actually that doesn't look too bad there. You can just kind of play around, figure out how you want to do that, but just gives it a little more definition, which is nice. This one is aligned here. If you don't do that, it doesn't look as good. And I'll create a save point, and you can scrunch these up a little bit if you want, or you can set them. You can set the row node to the left, right. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily work. Maybe if you have this all the way out, sometimes it'll work a little bit like that. But if you have it on expand, that's like the newest feature for Blender, especially when you're, let's see if I can get it to do it. I don't think it's going to do it. Let me see here. If I just join these areas and get rid of that, it seems Blender got rid of that problem. There was a problem with all these scrunching up, and now it doesn't do it anymore. But anyways, so now we're kind of getting somewhere. We've got a partial add-on here that is a loop, and this is looping just these objects. If I select a mesh, let's pull up the console here. We can see we have every single time we have compiled successfully, and it looks really good. So if I go ahead and now do a force shift R, you can see we compile successfully down here. And we'll look at the console one more time. Looks good. So there you go. That is the beginning. And just for the fun of it, let's throw one more thing in, like right here. Guess we can do this as well. And if you don't set it to property, and I'm just throwing the other one in, the and I made the add-on disappear because I've got this with no property attached. It's just not going to show up. No big deal. So you just go ahead and tag all these things in. And what I was hoping to do here was test out the wireframe from the viewport display here. If you right click on that and grab Serpens property, we can throw that in and set that to active object, and we'll throw a loop on that and just go ahead and grab one of these, because nothing's going to show up if you don't have that selected. And we could actually put something in here as a check that says what you need to do. So if this is a curve add-on, if it's false, we will actually want to say something, because that kind of threw me off, not gonna lie. So if that's false, let's show a label. And here's the label. It says, let's select a curve object. And you can throw this in here with a nice curve icon, some sort that looks good, something like that. And you can put a display icon. Okay, so you gotta be careful with these. You could actually throw one of these in, and you can put this to like maybe 3. Go too crazy with it. I think if you grab an actual icon node, this would look a lot better. For the image, pick up something. I got some demo icons in here. I don't think I have anything that looks like a curve. Use that. And now this can actually have the label attached to it, just for the fun of it. Let's select a curve object and get rid of that. And that just gets somebody's attention. Oh, okay, select a curve object, and then that crazy thing disappears. Or if you were to delete an object, there is now no curve and there's no active object. I'll throw my light back in there for the fun of it. Now we've got that set up. I come back down here and I'm gonna go ahead and tag all of these in. This is for the wire. So if I grab wire, show that, now you'll have a grab button, which I technically want this button. It's Alt. Well, I don't want to do that. I'm going to throw this over here. And have that grab button at the end. Just makes a little more sense. And we can tag that in so everything works. Still good. And wireframe will now turn on or off for them. And you don't even have to have it selected. You're just doing these different things. Apparently I've got an extra wireframe button in there. Yeah, I'll put an extra wire in up here. No big deal. I'll throw all that out. Save point. There we go. So that will work pretty good for loops. And this tutorial is getting a little bit long. So I'm going to kill it here. And next we'll do this. And I'll have this in the Serpens playlist on my YouTube. The next one I'm going to be doing a loop for execute. So that's it. Hope you guys found this educational, and I will put a link to this file so you can grab this in the comments or the description of the tutorial. Catch you guys in the next one.